Now, in a bid to enable farmers who have been uprooted by bandits and kidnappers to return to their farms and boost food production, President Bola Tinubu declared in his Independence Day address yesterday that his administration is committed to restoring peace to the volatile regions of the north. Let's have a look.
We have restored peace to hundreds of communities in the north, and thousands of our people have been able to return home. It is an unfinished business, I agree, which our security agencies are committed to ending as quickly as possible. As soon as we can restore peace to many communities in the troubled part of the north, our farmers can return to their farms. We expect to see a leap in food production and a downward spiral in food costs. I promise you, we shall not falter on this. The central concern of our people today is the high cost of living, especially food costs. This concern is shared by many around the globe as prices and the cost of living continue to rise worldwide. My fellow Nigerians, please be assured that we are implementing many measures to reduce the cost of living here at home. I commend the governors, particularly in Kebbi, Niger, Jigawa, Kwara, Nasarawa, and other Southwest governors that have embraced our agricultural production program. I urge other states to join the federal government in investing in mechanized farming. We are playing our part by supplying fertilizer and making tractors and other farm equipment available. Last week, the Federal Executive Council approved establishing a local assembly plant for 2,000 John Deere tractors, combine harvesters, disc riders, bottom plows, and other farm equipment.
Now, Adefeko, Director, Corporate and Regulatory Affairs, Ola Magri, and Chairman, Industrial Group LCCI, joins me now to discuss this further. Ade, good morning to you. It's a pleasure to have you here. Great. Of course, we just heard from the President very affirmative words there. Let's begin with your overall sentiment around his address on agriculture-related matters.
My sentiment is positive. Positive to the extent that let's dimension the issue. Let's do a quick diagnostics. I think prior to now, we've had an availability problem and an affordability problem. But right now, we have an availability positive and an affordability negative. So people can afford what is available. And he spoke to the fact that food prices have come down. We're facing food crisis, high cost of food. But to a large extent right now, because of cyclical production and harvests, that's why we're seeing prices going down now to a large extent. But I think we must be very, very systemic and systematic in how we approach agriculture and not adopt an ad hocism approach or an ad hoc approach to it, which is what I think we've been doing prior to now. So for me, I think overall sentiments on the speech, good words, hope renewed. What we need now is hope realized.
Okay, I mean, hope is also a key word in its own sense, and we're going to have to dissect that a bit. But insecurity has been a major deterrent to especially farmers in conflict-prone areas. And as we see, the President touched on his national address. And I just want to quote, so that I do not take him out of context. He said, "We have restored peace to hundreds of communities in the north, and thousands of our people have been able to return home. It's an unfinished business, which our security agencies are committed to ending as quickly as possible." What is your assessment of the efforts made in this regard so far? And more importantly, how hopeful are you of how quickly this could be put to an end?
I think to be fair to this administration to a large extent, security situation has improved. Okay, I'm not saying we're there yet. It's not El Dorado. So from a security, let's look at it on a security ratio scale of probably 6 or 7 over 10. Because, I mean, things were very bad prior to now. So a lot of gains have been made, but it's work in progress. And to a large extent, some farmers are going back to the farms, to continue with their, their vocation, as it were. But I think there's an improvement, but there's still much work to be done. So that's my take on it. So for me, I think you need to understand that in security, okay, food security and national security, there's a nexus, okay, between both. When you have security, food security and national security are more or less intertwined. So, and I think if that is sorted to a large extent, and like I said, it's work in progress, we will get better yields. And again, you have to understand the fact again that our agriculture is to a large extent very cyclical. It's usually one cycle at best, rather than having 2 or 3 cycles all year round. So what we're seeing right now is that we're having our abundance of, of production because of harvests for tomatoes, yams, and all the likes. That's why, to a large extent, food inflation is more or less a bit, tapering, But I think we should be, like I said, we should be a bit more holistic rather than being, ad hoistic.
No, absolutely. And so it sounds like your outlook on it is generally quite a positive one. And we will get to food inflation in a bit because we can't have this conversation without that. But let's look at processes now. Mechanization of farming has been a key talking point for time immemorial, to be quite factual, actually. And now the president also alluded to the Federal Executive Council's approval of 2,000 tractors and other farm equipment. Is this effort a drop in the ocean in relation to what's really required? Or would you say it's just a nice step in the right direction?
For me, I think government should not be involved in, in purchase or procurement of, mechanization or agricultural-related activity. You should leave that to the private sector to a large extent. I mean, the mechanization rate in Nigeria is among one of the lowest in Africa and probably in the global south. When I talk about global south, then we're talking about Africa, South America, Oceania, and Oceania. So for me, talking about this step of having X number of tractors and Y number of tractors, for me is a drop in the ocean on the one hand. But for me, I think what government should do is to encourage the organized private sector and farmers in the cooperatives of the organized private sector who are involved in agriculture to midwife that step. Because government should actually not be involved in agriculture. What government should do is to define and bring about a policy framework that supports food production.
But it appears government seems to think otherwise.
Well,
is there any reason that could lead them to believe in that? And of course, you're saying that there should just be a clear demarcation of roles here. But is there a way of working together?
No, of course. There's always a way of working together. What government should do is government should always have the private sector players involved. Have a quarterly, if possible, meet with them to understand the issues. You see, if you don't understand my issues, you can't help me out. It's just like going to a doctor. The doctor will first of all ask you, what do you think is wrong with you? I'm feeling X, I'm feeling Y. So you need to feel my pain points, understand where I'm coming from, okay, before you now begin to address my concerns, as it were. So for me, I do not think government should get involved in that because they don't have the expertise, okay, to a large extent. So the organized private sector, the farmers, through their cooperatives, are the ones that should, be midwife this process. Government should just come up with a policy and make sure that that policy is a long-lasting one. It's not too much of what you call an interventionist policy, which is usually very short-term. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's move now to the pith of the wider issue, high food inflation, which you touched on earlier, which has been a major sore point, undoubtedly. How do you propose this should be tackled? What is being done differently right now?
What I think should be done, and what I think should be done is government should allow the players, the major players, and again the subnationals, to get involved in this process and midwife this process. You have major players, particularly in the agricultural sector, who play different roles across the agricultural value chain. Have outgrowers, have small-scale farmers who are in their fold. Those are the farmers through cooperatives that they should push to help achieve food security. So for me, like I said, I do not think government has a business in agriculture, apart from providing the framework.
But in terms of what has been done so far, have you seen any real efforts in that regard?
Well, the efforts I've seen have been a lot of things being spoken to, but I've not seen a lot being done. Let's take a quick example. Government spoke about the interventionist policy for 6-month framework for, to bring in rice, wheat, corn, and a few other staples. But this policy announcement was made in July. This is October. It's a 6-month intervention scheme. We're in October. So October, November, December, it's over. As we speak right now, fiscal policies with respect to that has not been released. So I think for me, that is a bit of a worry. My members at the Industrial Council, who rely so much on a lot of these inputs, a lot of these things for their production, particularly in the agri-industrial sector, are worried. And I think government should look at that quickly, which is why I spoke to the fact that government should regularly touch base with the organized private sector, particularly through the agencies, the MANs of this world, the LCCRs of this world, and the NACIMAs of this world. So this organized private sector is very key. So for us, it's always important for us for them to hear us out and for them to collaborate so they can understand where the shoe pinches.
Right, a very healthy exchange. So, of course, you're alluding to the free import duty program. Yes. And, of course, you're talking about, look, there is an announcement and then there's the issue of implementation. Yes. What happens when we don't see the implementation?
So the problem we have right now is what we call sequencing. Sequencing is an issue. So you announce a policy, you need to properly sequence that policy, okay? So that we know, a policy was announced in July and we're in October and we still don't seem to know where we're going. Let me give you a quick example. Wheat, for example. Nigeria produces around about 100,000 tons of wheat, okay? We consume between 4.7 and 4.8 as at 2023 import figures. So we have a gap. And you see, a gapping analysis needs to be done with respect to respective crops that we want to intervene in. So you have to do your gap analysis properly. As you do your gap analysis on the finance side, you must do your gap analysis on the agricultural side. What is the deficit? What do you want to bridge? Okay, so 100,000 locally produced wheat, which is a temperate crop. It's not a tropical crop. So you cannot legislate overnight that you want to grow wheat to the tune of 2 million tons, 3 million tons, 4 million tons. We're still importing for now, so that needs to be handled. So right now, 4.6, 4.7, okay? Look at the gap you have, okay, as a 2023 figures. You can't legislate that. You have to work on it, and you have to work on it over time. So it takes time. Look at rice. We consume round about 7.8 million tons. We produce about 5 million tons. There's another gap there. So those things are very important. You need to look at the gaps and try and fill in the gaps. And in filling in the gaps, bring in the players who can help you fill the gaps. Because you have the known players who play in these respective sectors and value chains. What is important is for government to speak with them or partner with them or hear them out and say, you know what, let's come up with a framework that works for all. Because food security is an integral part of national security.
But where does the onus lie? Adi, this is your forte, and you have been in this for donkey years, so you've observed enough to be able to answer this question I'm about to ask you. Where we talk about announcement and implementation, how do we address the stopgaps? And where does the onus lie? When you say, hey, you made this announcement, you've not been able to meet up with it, how do we circumvent the situation? Well,
it's really very tough because, people have, the industry is quite worried, okay? That, the announcement was made, nothing has happened. Talks, you expect talks to have, been had. Talks are still being had. But you ask yourself, the lag time is a bit too much. I think where we're a bit lucky is because as we speak right now, this is what's it called season, okay? Harvest season, which is why to a large extent we're still able to maneuver. But post that, what happens? So we need to sequence properly. We need not only to speak to the issues, we need to act on the issues. Okay? We need to act. Most times we speak, we don't act. So we need to walk the talk. Very, very important. And we all know action is what we're looking for. Adefeko, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the Global Business Report. Always a pleasure to have you. And hopefully the next time we see you, we see some implementation. All right, then.